Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Stick to Water Polo this evening. We've had one day of Olympic competition, and I've got my regular co-host, Debbie Watson, joining us. Welcome, Debbie.
Thanks for having me, Westy and Dan.
Well, and also along is Dan Bartels on the World Aquatics referees panel. We'll get to refereeing a little bit later on, but what do you guys make of the first game, Australia? We want to just review Australia playing China. They got up 7-5. Didn't have it all their own way.
Yeah, I thought it was actually pretty promising when you think about everything the team has been through over, even just the last week, coming in 5 players having COVID, there's probably niggling injuries going around as well. The girls who were having their second Olympic Games, they'd never played in front of a crowd. Their parents, hadn't seen them play at that level. You could see the emotion on the girls when they walked out. There was players crying during the national anthem. All of those things are exhausting. So, thinking about even the COVID earlier during the week, I was thinking, it's not a bad distraction. Also give players some time to rest because you always do have niggles coming into tournaments like this. But I think that with the combination of the excitement of what the Olympic Games is and just the realization of it, I think, to get the victory at the end, just to go straight to the end, I think you could see why the girls were again crying at the end of the game. It was just relief. It was just that the tension had gone. They've survived their first game. They've got their points, and now they can get on with the rest of the tournament.
Yeah, I agree with that too, Deb. I think you can actually see the team sort of they had struggled a little bit, I think, in the last week and a half to get some cohesion, get some good training sessions together. The first half was blowing out some cobwebs. There were a couple of missed shots, a couple of errors that I haven't seen a few of those girls make for a long time. But then, the second half, it was tight, but it wasn't like they were in any major concern through most of the game. They were in pretty good control. Yes, the Chinese came back towards the end, but they had good answers to all those aspects of the game. They weren't necessarily getting all the calls that they'd want to have. There was nothing bad in the game, but I think they definitely controlled the ball. They forced China to play the Australian style of game versus anything else. I think that was a testament to the team, and I think it was there's some good coaching in there and definitely some good leadership from the senior players.
So you saw all 3 Test matches, Australia-China, in Australia earlier this year in the lead up to the Olympics, and China was here in Australia, just obviously trying to get some intel on their first game of the Olympics. Do you think we took a lot out of that game? We learned a lot about their style of play. They obviously learned a little bit about ours, but obviously we've come out on top.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was beneficial, obviously, for both teams. I would probably have expected the Australians, I think, would have thought the game would have been a lot more physical last night than it was, but you just never know what the refereeing tempo is going to be like. And I think to Australia's advantage, it wasn't a slugfest. I think, we certainly can mix it. We've got some players who are very capable of playing that style of game. It's not good for us to play like that because it takes us away from our fast and free-flowing game and we get really bogged down. So I think it was a massive bonus for us. So I think definitely the Chinese had intel, but that's what they would have wanted to bring out last night, and they weren't allowed to do it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get the share up here of the actual results from the game. And I think the internet's giving me a little bit of drama here today. So I really wanted to get the stats up. We can have a look at the minutes played, shots, conversions. There we go. There's Australia up there on the screen for you right now. So, some big minutes by some of the players. Obviously, Gabby Palm played the whole 4 quarters, so that would have been really good for her. She ended up with, I think, a 50% save rate, which is a great start.
Yeah, I thought Gabby looked pretty nervous actually last night, which surprised me because she does have a lot of international experience under her belt. She did play well. I'm sure she'll, have knowing that there are areas for her to improve on. She didn't really look like she relaxed into the game at any time. I felt like there was always tension in her face. So I think that's good to have a game like that to get it out of your system.
Yeah, I think out of all the players, the one that's kind of surprised me the most, and I think you can see the shooting percentage there from Bronte Halligan. That game becomes a whole different event if she's sort of sitting well above the 13% that she normally would be able to score at. So whether that was good defence or just a little bit of nerves from her sort of at the start of the tournament, again she almost played the entirety of the game itself. I actually don't recall her coming out. So the 20 seconds that she's got that she wasn't in there, I'm not quite sure what happened there. But yeah, I think in terms of that piece, 1 from 8 from her, that's probably not what we normally see. And 2 or 3 of those goals go in and go the other way, and all of a sudden there's a very, very different result for us. So again, looking at the scoring percentages. Tilly in front of goals was just so hard to stop, and they were at one point I saw a 5-person defence on Tilly just to try and stop her. So that just changes the entirety of the way that a team's got to play on her as well.
Oh,
Yeah,
she's
absolutely.
a world-class player, Tilly Kearns, world-class centre forward, Tilly Kearns. And you look at when you talk about Halligan. Now, I don't think it was made official, but I did hear that she didn't play much in the lead-up games, and she might have slipped down some stairs and hurt herself, so they gave her a rest. So she's sort of blowing the cobwebs out, and you just know that she can score from anywhere. So 1 from 8 tonight, they got the victory. I don't think you're all that concerned about that.
I don't think it's a problem. I think if you look at that game, if a 7-5 result. Hey, we've had 5 girls with COVID in the last week, and I'm not sure if anyone remembers what that's like. But to try and play your first Olympic game on the back of a week of COVID, and come out with a 7-5 result, and again, a couple of little niggle injuries and bits and pieces, 2 or 3 goals, this becomes a 9-5, 10-5 result, and no, we've got a very, very different conversation to have.
I think with Bronte, I agree totally what you're saying there, Dan, as well. But I think, you can have too much responsibility as well. Bronte has a different role in this team. Like, she has her hand on the ball all of the time. She's, directing traffic. She's always super busy. We can't be expecting her to be doing all of that and scoring the goals. She gets a couple of goals. That's a good thing. But if she's absorbing, you've got Tilly, which we just spoke about, having, at times 5 players rushing back on her. Surely we have to have some outside shooters stand up, and it can't just be Bronte, because she's, holding the ball and directing the traffic that goes with it.
Agree with that completely, Deb, and I think that's possibly, she definitely played that quarterback role through the entirety of the game. That was a massive part of her role, to really, really control both the timing of the attack, how they're moving down the ball, even sometimes when they're backing off the attack, to make sure they've got that cover. She definitely controlled that, and I think did an exceptional job. So there's zero. Please don't listen to this, Bronte, and think that I'm criticising at all. If anything, I'm trying to do the opposite. I think the girls played an exceptional game, and I can't wait to see what the rest of the tournament brings forward.
Yeah, it guarantees them a spot in the quarterfinal now. Obviously, they're going to now want to try and finish as high as they can in their group. So you get the perceived easier crossover. I mean, there is no easy games at this level in the Olympics. Once they eliminate 2 teams out of the women, you've got 8 teams in the quarterfinals that can win the championship.
Yeah. And I think the fact that we played China first up, I mean, if you look at kind of the betting markets, look, China and France are very long odds in terms of sort of getting through the tournament. So, there's 8 other teams who we're a part of, who they're looking for the rest of what's going to happen. And I think all of those teams are quite close. Some of the other results from the events overnight. Look, the US destroyed Greece. That was an absolute masterclass of water polo. Hats off to Adam and his team. But they controlled what have been top 4, top 6 team over the last kind of 12 4 or 5 years, and schooled them in terms of how you play Olympic water polo. So I think we've definitely got to have a look at sort of what comes from here, and getting through some of those critical quarterfinal games and semi-final games is going to be the most important part.
Yeah, and I think with Ashley Johnson, you're looking at. Sorry, Deb, we keep talking over each other.
I know. We're a long way apart. We are.
Everyone's in a different part of. You two in two different parts of Sydney. I'm in Western New South Wales. But anyway, I was going to say Ashley Johnson played about 25 minutes in that game. and save percentage is around 70-71%. I mean, she's just unbeatable.
Yeah, she is phenomenal. She's
to me, it was
so dangerous.
I would say it wasn't even just her defence. It wasn't even just as her defence. It was the rest of her game as well. She controls the team in defence so well. They're so clear on what they've got to do in their defence against the Greeks, which is why they shut them down for so long. And then in counter-attack, her passes are just amazing. The number of times in counter-attack she dropped the ball on a dime in front of a player in pressure from the other end of the pool. Just I don't think in either genders of the game there is a goalkeeper as good as Ashley. She just is so sensational. She's a pleasure to watch.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you on that. She is just phenomenal, and she gives everyone so much confidence. And you can see the fear in the eyes almost of the shooters of the opposition, when they're, lining up to take the shot. You have to be fearless against her, but she's remarkable and, once in a lifetime athlete for sure. If you're looking at Greece, though, I do think they're pretty cagey. Was it 2004 that they lost, and then won the gold medal? They know what they're looking at. They know they know to beat the USA in the round. They don't care that they're going to beat them. They're just focused on what's coming up in, another 2 or 3 games, and they're just focusing on the crossovers, basically. So you can't really take too much away from Greece. And the European teams, they're cagey. They just have a lot more experience playing internationally than what we do. And they've got those breaks, which we don't have. We've got to build momentum, and we don't have that luxury of being able to do that. So, the crossovers are just going to be just so important. And in Australia's point of view, you just can't take your eye off your own performance, because it doesn't matter who you're going to line up against. You just have to beat them.
Absolutely. Do we know? I'm not quite sure who we're likely to cross over against. Do we have a model of how that will work, or any type of prediction?
Once you get to the quarterfinals, it's 1, 4, 2, 3 crossovers. So it all depends on where the other group finishes. But clearly, you want to finish higher up. A team that's come 3rd or 4th in the group, you think maybe they're a little bit out of form. They've got through. They've won that one game in their group phase to get through. But are they firing at all? On all systems. You've just got to get better through the tournament. I mean, it's tournament water polo, isn't it? Doesn't matter how you win. If you win each game and just get a little bit better each game, and just you want to peak in the semi-final and final, that's when you want to be your best.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously the other side of the draw, you've got USA and Spain, and you would think they're going to finish 1 and 2 in an order, and then 3 and 4 are going to be Italy and Greece. You would think, but it's not guaranteed. So, that's what I mean. Like, there is just no point focusing on, I want to finish second to play Greece, because you might play Italy, you might play, you just don't know. And once you start toying in your own little head, you can, sort of do yourself some damage on that.
Yeah. And look, the Spanish team played such a solid game against the French. I mean, they controlled that game all the way through, as you'd expect them to. But some of their outside shooting was just exceptional. Again, some of the names in that team who've been around some of 4th, 5th Olympics in terms of where they're playing. I think that 4th Olympic is the longest tenure of one of the girls in there. But they've just got such knowledge around how to control the team and how to get themselves out of those holes when there's problems. So again, you don't want to come up against the Spanish have been so good for the last kind of 24 months.
Yeah, I was just trying to get the individual stats up. It's just not coming up at the moment. But if you look at the overall team stats, Australia converting 27% of their shots. They were 2 from 5, so 40% at extra, which is not too bad. Spain, 50% field conversion, 71% 6 on 5. USA leading the stats, 52% in the field and 88% they scored 7 from 8 at extra, like quite incredible.
Yeah.
So when Adam's got them on, he's got them on.
I mean, if you compare, just we've just come off watching the Australian men versus the Spanish, and I think their stats are kind of sort of in the mid 30s in terms of extra man percentage. To have an 80 plus percentage for your extra in any game is just sensational. So the US have definitely turned up to play.
Oh, definitely. They are a quality outfit, and very hard to stop at the best of times. So, we're all in agreement that we're pretty happy with the way Australia started. They got away, they got the victory. The girls who hadn't played in the Olympics get their first game, get some time under their belt. and they'll feel more confident coming into the next match. I think they're going to be in pretty good shape, and they go up against our next women's game is on Wednesday at 10 o'clock local Australian Eastern Standard Time against the Netherlands.
Well, that's going to be a great
I've
test
got a question for it is. I've got a question, Deb, for you out of that game. Who would you give on the Aussie team as your player of the game? Who do you think stood out from what you saw?
Or from do you disagree with what you saw from the World Water Polo? Because they picked Abby Andrews.
I didn't even see who
Abby Andrews, yeah. She's got
Abby
3
Andrews.
goals.
Often, I mean, I thought Abby, yeah, she did do some really solid work. It's interesting because I don't actually know who selects those awards, but it is often the person who scores the most goals. I thought Abby obviously shot very well. It was sort of difficult to pick. Is it? Yeah, it's I thought it was pretty difficult to pick. I thought Abby did play well. I thought, like I'm going to go off field here a little, like Sienna Green, I thought she, got in a little bit of foul trouble early, but then her like little inside drives, like those sorts of bits for someone who's, making their Olympic debut, who's really only been in the program for 6 months, it's nice. Yeah. It's not like no one knows her because she's been in the college system. It's not like we'd been hiding her in Australia. I thought she did some really nice pieces of work. Alice started really strongly. I'm not sure if she's one of the athletes that, maybe was a bit unwell. I feel like she sort of got a bit bogged down in, that towards the end of the second and the third quarter, but she just did not stop trying. Yeah, I think it was, then, obviously Zoe, that cracker of a cross-cage goal, what a beauty that was. It's some of the off-the-ball work can be difficult to spot when you're watching television as well. Like you might you don't see all the little passes, not always quite sure. So, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not a big fan of the old MVP by the game.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very, very accurate call there. I think I saw a lot of great work, and I actually made comment. Look, I think Sienna Green did a sensational sort of first hit out as an Olympic Games, and again, being very new to the team, it's easy to get kind of overwhelmed by those big events. And she stood up and showed she was world class.
You will quite often get that MVP. It's kind of easy. The delegates trying to watch the game, control what's happening on the table, make sure they're on top of that. They're also trying to assess the referee. So it's not the furthest thing in the front of their mind to say who's the best player. They're trying to look at the overall game and how the referee's travelling, how's the table going. We're not making any mistakes, making sure everything's running smoothly. But Deb, you and I know when in Australia in the Australian Water Polo League, we really like the busy players. They're not necessarily the goal scorers. I mean, they're brilliant as well. We need people to score goals, but we like the busy players that set up the play, that maybe swim the blocks or throw the assists and do the hard yards and work hard in defence and scramble back and do all those, those things that don't get heralded by getting onto the score sheet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's difficult. People value different things, like we like to do that. Obviously, we discuss that a lot, It's difficult to call, but I just would rather see, the spread of the goals, the spread of the steals, the spread of the assists. You just become a much harder team to actually mark. And I feel like we were sort of heading in that way last night.
Well, so we want to give Australia a rating out of 10 for their opening game. 7 out of 10.
Look, you get they've got the win, which is the most important, but I would be thinking they'd be sitting around a 6 at the minute. There's so many areas for them to improve on. At the end of the day, just getting that first game out of the way, you could see some real sparks in there, definitely some positive areas, but obviously lots to work on. And I'd go a 6, but they're going to get higher than that.
Dan?
I'm hard.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair, Deb. I think if we're looking at the again, back to the betting markets, if we're saying that China and France are those two teams that we don't think will make the quarters, you probably want a better result than 7-5 coming out of that. So look, let's not look at the top end of a rating out of 10. Look, I think there were a lot of areas where there were a number of unforced errors across the team, where there was a bit of uncoordination between the team, just not syncing together well. Again, all of that could be knocked down to first game. You've had a bunch of players that have been very ill. So, no criticisms there. But, again, I would sort of say that the 6.5 to 7.5 mark for me in terms of where they got to. And again, I think it's much more comparing from my view to what I've seen the team perform at, and those girls in particular. There was nothing wrong with how anybody played, but I think there is definitely a gear that the team can go up as they come against some of the better teams, which is a great thing for everybody out there watching. There is so much more to come from this cohort of girls. They really can perform at the next level.
Well, let's wrap it up there on the women, and let's move now forward to the men. We've all just been watching that game coming out. It's 6:30 our time on the Eastern States, and they came up against Spain. That's a really, really tough opening game. When you look at Spain, bronze medalists out of the last couple of World Championships. They are, in previous generations, gold and silver Olympic medalists. We went down 9-5, but I'm going to say the Australians went down swinging when you've got only 3 players in that team with Olympic experience. I thought they were terrific.
Yeah, I thought they tried their guts out, absolutely. But, to play against Spain, who are one of the favourites of the tournament with 12 players, that's a hard ask, even just to start with, And then we ended up with Nathan out on 3. So then we're down to 11, and then we've got another goalie in there. So, that's a real challenge to even, get going. I thought their performance, as I said, they tried their guts out, and there was some, brilliant playing there as always.
Yeah, Luke Pavillard, for those that don't know, picked up a suspension
think
at the World Championships in his final game there and wasn't able to serve that out before the first game here in Paris because it's got to be in a World Aquatics official match. So he had the 1 match suspension. So he sat that out now. That's a dynamic left-hand attack option that wasn't in the pool for the Australians. But, Angus Lambie played out of his skin, first Olympics.
Yeah,
that's the best international game that I've seen Angus Lambie play. And look, I've seen him play a number of games overseas, and he's a player that definitely steps up and plays at just that next level internationally. Is just driven by the players around him and who he's competing against. And I've seen him score some amazing goals, both in training games and in competition. And he definitely stepped up. Not just those 2 goals that he scored, but also just around the pool. He was dangerous, and the Spanish were consistently double marking him. They were watching him. And putting a zone where necessary, and again that just opened up so many other options for the Australian team to really, provide a challenge for the Spanish. Look, that's an absolute testament to Angus because a number of years ago, you wouldn't have thought of Angus as a world level centre forward, but he definitely has become that, and he's got a big long career in front of him, depending on how long he wants to play for. But he's an absolute product of water polo in Australia, and well done to him.
He's quick for a centre forward. When it's a nice foil with Lockie Edwards, who's another big guy who's pretty quick up and down the pool. Angus is like a 56, 5700 swimmer. He's quick. He's got a decent 100 in him.
Yeah.
And he's got a big motor. And then you've got the other big man in Lockie Edwards, who is a nice foil. They're slightly different kind of players, but Lockie's probably going to go in and maybe draw a few more exclusions and maybe turn a couple of blokes and get a couple of penalties. But it's a nice 1-2 punch, the centre forwards.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got a couple of other really good players who can sort of play that extra post if need be and provide a double centre, which really does, open up the attacking opportunities. And we saw that a few times. Milos drove in quite a few times and played that second centre. You saw Blake Edwards do it a number of times. Again, that just opens up the opportunities for us. But again, Angus really did play out of his skin for the game, and I can't give him enough credit for what he did in his first Olympics.
And Deb,
it was pretty impressive, wasn't it? Yeah, again. Sorry.
No, go. I was going to say, you go ahead on that, but I was going to say for you, Nick Porter in goals, plays in Spain, plays with Barceloneta, so he's taken a lot of shots against a lot of those Spanish boys, so I thought he was pretty good as well.
Yeah, I did think he was good. I think there was probably 2 goals in particular that I think he'll be really disappointed with. I feel like one, he just sort of lost a tiny bit of focus after a brilliant save, and another goal sort of dribbled dribbled, but at speed, as dribble as a Spanish goal can be, into a low corner, which I feel like he just really wanted. He knows he could have got to that. So, he certainly had a very good game, but I do think that there are a couple of goals in there that he'd probably, be a little annoyed at himself. But, the speed, it was wicked that comes out of the off the hand, the Spanish shooters is just unbelievable. You think you're covered, you think you've got the spot, you've got your blocks up, and they're just, it's wicked. I honestly, I blinked on one and it was in the back of the net.
Yeah. I think that dribbler one you're talking about is the Roger Tahul, where he had a couple of Australians on him, the big centre forward, and just got it out of a bit of a wrist shot at the end, and it got him Porter just a little bit off balance, and you can see it going there, and you can see he wants to get to it, but the body's going the other way, and you kind of get stuck in quicksand and just can't get there.
Yeah, that is the one.
Yeah, Deb, I think the piece that surprised me about the Spanish though is that they actually they hurt us on on counterattack.
Oh goodness.
And I think it was the unforced errors for us that really hurt us in the game. And Nick was doing his absolute best to try and sort of pull the shutters down. But the number of times that they just punished us on counterattack, I think if we'd been able to take that out of their game, or even 50% of that, it would have been a very, very different result, and possibly a win for Australia versus a loss in the first instance. Well, and again, you got players like Polo who were just able to react and know at 39 or whatever he is now. He knows. Can't believe he's playing at
5 Olympics.
Yeah, 5 Olympics. There's very, very few people that do one, let alone 5. And in order, he knows three passes ahead what's about to happen, and just not having that reaction time, and he just hurt us so many times. And again, you saw towards the end of the game, the team were covering, just following that anticipation rather than leading it. And I think that play from the Spanish really changed how we had to play the game as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was 3 counterattack goals, wasn't it? Like full-on honest counterattack goals, and you just don't see that in water polo very often anymore. Let alone, I think that at one stage there was 2 counterattack, up attackers and no defenders, and poor Nick, and it was that was phenomenal to see that at that level of competition.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for a Spanish bloke to be able to pass the ball on the break, and I'm going to pass it off to the secondary break so I can get it back for a clear, like that. Again, an international play that just doesn't really happen very often. So that wasn't a factor of the Australians not kind of having understanding the game and not reacting quickly. It was just the Spanish was so fast in understanding what was going to happen next. So I think just that piece we've got to sort of ratchet it up just a little bit and anticipate, which we'll need in. We've got the Japanese coming up. We've got to really anticipate. That's a big part of their style of play. That's an important game that we've got to get into.
Yeah, the Spanish men and the women, they play a beautiful game of water polo, and I'm a big fan of the way they play the game. They're not the most physical teams, but they're very, very skillful and, as you said, very quick around the park. And Peroni, well, he'll go down as one of the great players of all time.
Yeah, he's remarkable. But I think with the Spanish, it's just like this relentless pressure. It's not like, as you said, it's not that really physical. They're just holding, they're grappling. They just arrive when the ball arrives. If you've got the ball and you start to think about what you're doing, and then you're under pressure, and it happens all around the pool, and it makes you make a mistake because you're thinking about where you want the ball to go next, but they're arriving, and that was a real feature for me today for the Spanish. It looked, it doesn't ever look rushed for them. They're calm, they're in control, but the level of pressure that they're applying to the attacker is very, very high.
Yeah, I also think though they made quite a few mistakes out of today's game as well. So if I compare them to the Spanish team that I've seen play at different tournaments around the world, they weren't quite that absolute pure finesse that I've seen from them in the past. So there's definitely some cracks there in the Spanish team, which I don't think we did a great job of exploiting. And we've got to take it to ratchet up to the next level with the teams we're going to come up against. The Australian team are well known for normally knocking off one of the top, one of the medal teams. So we absolutely have that in us. And again, the Spanish team, who in previous tournaments over the last kind of 24 months have been knocking on the door of a win, if not a medal. I didn't quite see that from them, in this tournament with that team. Now, this just could be an early game, but they've definitely got some of that outside shooting power to really, damage some of the teams, given a little bit of stuff.
Yeah, look, they are very dangerous around the pool and attack, but they've also got the young guy Aguiar in goals, who's, you've got to rate him at the moment in the top 2 or 3 goalkeepers on the planet.
Absolutely, and again, he had that same result, that same reaction as Nick on a couple of those goals where he just shouldn't have let them in, and he couldn't believe that they went past him. So again, he's absolutely one of the top goalkeepers, and again, if he plays out of his skin in any game, all of a sudden the results are completely different, a different number to get to.
So, Deb, looking forward, Tuesday, 30th of July at 6:30, Australia-Serbia. That's our next assignment for the men. The women, due to the way it is with 5 teams, they get the day off. They get the bye round tomorrow, and then the men are back. So we'll get a women's game, and then we're going to get 2 men's games, and then we'll get back to the Australia-Netherlands women. But Australia-Serbia men, we can push Serbia. We can battle pretty strong. I mean, Serbia's won the last 2 Olympics, and they had to fight pretty hard against us in Rio to get out of the pool stage.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're annoying, they probably think they should just beat us, but they just don't just beat us. They have to always come out and bring their best game. I'm expecting having everyone back on the card will make that little bit of difference as well. Aussies have got a little bit of their nerves, their excitement, out of the way as well. And I think they'll be super focused, and I give them a really good shot against Serbia.
Yeah, I agree with that, Deb. As I said earlier, I mean, we are well known for knocking off one of the teams and putting someone in strife for not making a crossover or not making the level they thought they would in whether it's World Champs or Olympics. And historically, our challenge has been just kind of putting together a couple of those wins in a row to get us to that next level. We have a really good chance against Serbia. They are not that super fast counterattack team we just saw from Spain. We showed, if anything, in that Spanish game that again, if you take that counterattack goals out of the equation, it's a 1-goal game. And all of a sudden, if we're looking at just a sort of a pure play, non-counterattack water polo game, which I would expect the Serbian style to be, again, don't get me wrong, they can damage you in counterattack just like anybody else. They're still pretty quick, but it's not typically their focus. We can take it to them, and we can absolutely show that we've got good centre forwards, we've got great centre backs. And again, once you bring Pavlard back in, we've got 2 exceptional left-handers, which definitely opens up our attack. And again, I made the comment about the scoring percentages. Jacob Mercer probably, I think he was 1 from 8 or something today, 1 from 9. That's not a great percentage on his side. So again, a couple of those land the other side of the post. All of a sudden, it's a very, very different game. And against Serbia, again, he comes with an enormous reputation of being a college all-star a number of times in a row. So, he can absolutely step up to that top level. And, if we're getting those goals and where we need to off the setup from a good attack, it's a very different game. I think we can absolutely take Serbia.
Yeah, slingshot left-hander, and obviously Nathan Power and Blake Edwards are going to lead the team around the pool. Super experienced, and they'll keep the boys firing along. So let's jump into referees. Nick Hodges, he had a shot clock duty.
I haven't seen
shot clock duty and a VAR duty so far. Hasn't refereed a game yet, but it's his first Olympics, and you kind of got to work your way into it before they're going to give you a game.
Yeah, I think the one thing I did see, they've appointed for each of the referees, the VAR referee that's been appointed with them. 10 looked like they were appointing a more senior referee.
Yes.
So that probably bodes well for Nick, particularly in these first early rounds. So, hopefully he can sort of look towards some of the more difficult games, which is what we all want. So, yeah, look, best of luck for Nick.
Well, you're a referee. You'd be chomping at the bit to get the whistle in the mouth and get a game under your belt, wouldn't you?
Look, you are and you aren't. Look, Look, you absolutely
Do you handle pressure?
absolutely want to go and referee a game. Look, that's the whole point of being a referee, right? It's the thing you absolutely want to get to. In fact, I have to acknowledge some of the commentators over there. I was watching the sevens, and the commentators were acknowledging the fact that for any of the referees as they were running out and introducing the teams and the referees, being selected not just to represent your country as an official, but also which game you get. That's a badge of honour for each of the officials, and being involved in those events is just something that you work your entire career for. So for each of the officials, and look, they don't get everything right. That's why we've all got technology and other bits and pieces around us to try and make sure we eliminate as much of those as possible. But there's an aspect of pressure there, but you just want to succeed. So I think Nick would be absolutely waiting for the opportunity to whistle himself.
Hey, Deb, having the VAR now come live onto the TV, you can see the referee there talking to the VAR referee, and you can see the replay coming back and going forward and talking about what he wants to look at. That is so good for our sport. It's just so transparent and makes it really clear for a lot of people watch the game at the venue and on TV who don't know the sport intimately. They might be just an Olympic year watcher. It's really important that we help them understand the game.
Without a doubt. Well, it's come a long way, as you said, because, I feel like it was only a short time ago that it was behind the back and everyone would go around and look around the corner and make sure the cameras weren't allowed to come. Whereas having that was an excellent discussion today that we saw in the men's game. And Hark's obviously doing the commentary. Often when you're doing the commentary, you're that high up or you're looking at the screen yourself, and so you might not even see what is in contention. So by having the VAR and having it so open and the discussion, it just takes away any guesswork, because there's nothing worse than sitting there trying to guess what they're looking at. Like, I thought today's was a fantastic example of the benefit of the VAR.
So, Dan, that situation was an exclusion with 27 seconds left on the shot clock, so it doesn't reset to 20. You continue with the 27 seconds, and then the Australian player came in on 7 seconds. So they served the 20-second exclusion, and that's what the referee was trying to just quantify and qualify, because he got a call from the VAR about an early re-entry.
So I think what happened was, and this is probably possible, again, being a referee and knowing the rules it's different to then actually seeing what happened. I think there was a question from Tim Hamill, the Australian coach, on the re-entry time and then the reset of the clock. So, and again, I think that ended up hurting Australia on a quick shot from the Spanish afterwards.
Oh, yes.
It allowed them to set up and think and drop their heart rate. So again, it's one of those elements for, again, as an official, I kind of see these on a regular basis where you've got a coach who kind of goes mental and you pull the ball out to go and resolve a problem. And you actually think, as a referee, having seen this many, many times, like, this actually isn't going to help. Unless this goes 100% your way, this didn't help you. This is about to hurt you, because you've now got the attacking team about to chat, set, where's the pass going to be from, where am I going to be, how far do I want the defender to be away from me, etc. So I think all those things kind of come into the consideration. But what I saw happen was, again, we'd had that. Have I stalled here?
No, you're right.
You're going.
Sorry, there was an exclusion at 27 seconds. So the clock doesn't reset. So if the exclusion had been at 17 seconds per se, then the clock would go back up to 20. But because they're over that 20 seconds, you would normally get, the clock just stays as it is. So they served the 20 seconds, and at 7 seconds, they were called back in. There was subsequently a shot. So now there was another reset of the clock. It went to 30, and then it went back to 20. And at that point, they were calling out, hey, hold on, what should happen? What time should be allowed back on the clock? Now, that's where I think there was the issue. So, again, it may have been for Tim, and I think that it eventually got the ball at that point. So I think having a complaint about that in the hope that you were going to get the ball back, it just didn't play out. It didn't pan out. What ended up happening was Spain got the ability to, again, drop that heart rate, get prepared. Where was going to pass? They set where they wanted the ball from. So I don't know if you actually saw, but the Spanish player swam down under the feet of the referee. I want the ball here. thank you, and I know where I'm gonna make the pass. So it ended up hurting us pretty heavily for just what wasn't an error. And I think the issue they had was they thought they thought that the clock should have been at 0 and it should have been their ball.
Yeah. So in that situation, you said there was a shot and a reset. Players excluded, they're out for 20 seconds regardless of how many shots the other team has. You have a shot, you regather possession, you get another 20-second reset. And if accidentally they've hit the 30 instead of the 20, so the continuation of your possession is an easy way to explain it. You get 30 seconds when you steal the ball off the opposition, and then any continued possessions are 20 seconds. And generally, you get your 30 in the back half of the court, so you need a bit of time to get up the pool. And once you're up in that front half, you don't need 30 seconds. You just get 20, 20, 20. You have a shot, rebound, another exclusion, another 20 seconds.
That's right. Yeah. So I think in that scenario, look, it was a clock error. That's what they were calling out for, was a clock error. It was that close to the end of it. You know, the ball, it wasn't going to be a Spanish ball again at that point. So it was a Spanish ball again, but they weren't getting. I just would have let it play. In my opinion, I think that's one of those areas as a coach, be more focused on defending than what, you know, you've got a very, very low percentage chance that they got that wrong. And at which point, if they did afterwards with VAR, they can now go back and look at those things. So to me, I think, you know, better coaching would have been at that point in time just to allow that play to happen. If they score, now you can force the VAR to go back and have a look at that and say, hey, listen, no, the shot clock, that should have been our ball, and they would have taken it back. So again, you know, it's just how do you kind of handle those? And look, don't get me wrong, I'm criticising Tim here, and he's a good friend of mine. Mate, I wouldn't want to be in his shoes for all the money.
There's no pressure. No pressure there coaching, is there? No pressure refereeing?
No pressure at all. No pressure. Look, I think that's a harder job. I think sometimes that's a harder job than right. I mean, you know, as an official, you make decisions on what you see in front of you. As a coach, you make decisions as to who's going in, what style you're going to play, when you inject yourself, and you're always the person that's blamed when your team loses. So, you know, I really, you know, I feel for anybody taking those roles on, and take my hat off to them. They you know, they do an exceptional job.
Well, something just came to my mind when you said about pressure, or I said about pressure, is Deb's had the ultimate pressure winning an Olympic gold medal. You've refereed international games. I'm just a numpty on the end here, just commenting.
You've got the pressure of holding us two together.
Exactly right.
Well, I think we'll probably get to the end of our discussion now. So for all the Australian fans, Tuesday the 30th of July at 6:30 Eastern Australian Standard Time, Australia take on Serbia. So, of course, that game's going to be live on Channel 9, or if you're on Stan Sport, then you can get it on there as well. And then we're super excited about Wednesday the 31st of July at 10 o'clock, Netherlands taking on Australia. So cracking games coming up for our Australian teams. They've started the tournament. They're into it. The men, it's a harder road to get out of that top six, like out of the six into the top four. 4 teams get eliminated out of the men's comp, 2 out of the women.
Yeah, I think for the girls, we're just talking before about the whole COVID, and you know, when the draw first came out for the women, and you thought, oh, they're playing China, then they've got their bye, and then they're going to like go bang, bang, bang. But you know, now that we've seen what's unfolded with the COVID and the rest of it, this is a actually perfect time for the Aussies to have their bye, because it gives them that extra couple of days just to really fine tune, get themselves back on song, you know, and really just hit the ground running on the next game, and then just keep that momentum for the rest of the tournaments. You know, I think for us, you know, now we're like, yes, we've got the bye for, you know, in that first round or second round.
I think you'd rather have it early than late.
Yeah, the timing couldn't have been better, could it?
Yeah. I think later in the tournament when you get some momentum.
Well, it just depends on your injuries and how you're going.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
You know what? There's a bright side to everything. You've always got to look for that.
Well, thanks for coming on, Dan. Thanks for your expertise and the refereeing insights. And we might keep doing this. We'll pick a rule that you can talk about. We'll give you, you know, as long as you need to explain a rule. Might get you to explain front water 6-on-5 and all the interpretations around that and how that's evolved. I think we'll need a 20-minute show for that one.
Definitely. I mean, that's probably the only thing I would say out of the 2 games or the last 2 days. The referees are definitely allowing play to occur. They're not trying to jump in and call exclusions. We haven't seen any blowouts from an exclusion, number of exclusions happening. So for anyone who hasn't watched water polo in a little while, there were a number of calls where penalties were given, particularly in the Australian games, where the players got front water. So now when you have front water,
I didn't mean explain it now.
From behind, even if you have the ball.
I'm going to go to bed.
I want to cut you off, buddy, but I think we'll save that for another episode.
Right, mate, no problem.
We're peaking too early.
We are.
To get back out there, we're going to go and watch the swimming.
We've got to work our schedule out. We've got a 6:30, then a 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 9:35. So we got some late nights coming up, people. Let's get a good night's sleep tonight. I'm gonna play our outro theme and we're out.
Right.
See you, everyone.
Bye.
Right, I've stopped recording.